During the harvest, we really have different types of operations, a lot of customer support. Many people of the team that are not CSM or support take part of this load, which is also a good thing because you get to understand how people interact with our systems. We need to have very flexible people in the team, and with tooling, the lever is incredible. It's much more powerful than headcount.
Hi, and welcome to Mission Ops Possible, a podcast for and by operation leaders. I am Guillaume, the head of marketing at Forest Admin. At Forest Admin, our team and our solutions are fully dedicated to operations. So we created a podcast fully dedicated to operations too. In each episode, I invite a different operation leader to speak about their vision, their tips, and their stories in the trenches. And on that front, today's guest is not going to disappoint. In this episode, my guest is Artemis Llamosi, who is the CTO of Inarix. Inarix is transforming the agricultural industry by turning smartphones into pocket laboratories to assess crop quality. Hello, Artemis. Thank you very much for joining me on this new episode. How are you doing today?
Hi, Guillaume. Thank you for the invitation. Doing great.
Awesome. So before we dive into Inarix, I wanted you to tell us a little bit about your career and exactly what led you to the path to Inarix.
My career has always been between applied mathematics and biology. In a more, I would say, innovation perspective. I worked a little bit in academia on complex genetic systems, both at the experimental level and at the theoretical modeling level. Then I joined the first startup called Dream about sleep. So it was about making a wearable for any consumer that has sleep problems to monitor sleep with EEG-based sleep recording, real-time algorithmic sleep staging, so classification of sleep and intervention on sleep to improve sleep. And 5 years ago, I joined Inarix, which is yet another completely different challenge, but again, on biological elements, which are crops, grains, cereals. And so I discovered the richness of the agricultural industry. I tried to make products for the farmers, for co-ops, for the industry that use advanced mathematics. And here it's deep learning, AI, to bring value on biological systems.
Tell us a bit more also about Inarix. What's the story of Inarix?
It's a French startup. It was founded in 2019 by Pierre Chapelle. Pierre used to work in a company that was making quality measuring devices, more traditional ones based on infrared spectroscopy. So one of the standard way to measure quality of crops, so think of wheat, barley, corn, soybeans, these kind of things, is to use spectroscopy. So it's benchtop machines, kind of things you can have in a lab. And these machines are good. They're great. The only thing is they're bulky, they're big, and they cost tens of thousands of dollars usually. And so they are only adapted to large enough point in the supply chain that can deserve this kind of investment. And Pierre saw the rise of image-based deep learning, and he was thinking there is something that can be built on this for this problem of crop qualification. That's how he went to found Inarix. I joined him early, and then we built a solid business. So we are now around 30. We are operating in 15 countries, Europe, also in Americas. And we analyze millions of tons of production. Actually, if you drink a beer anywhere in the world, you have a 10% chance that we measured the grain that was used to make your beer at some point. The company evolved a lot on these 5 years. We are still quite tech heavy, but more and more the challenges are shifting towards more business or operations related activities.
All right. So exactly what's the problem you're solving today?
Whatever you do, there are a lot of things that you don't control in agriculture. And so what you harvest, the crop, can be really different, even from one field to another or a portion of a field to another, or if you're harvesting in the morning or in the afternoon, there can be very important differences in quality. And so you have this production that is spread out over a really large portion of the world that is really variable. And logistical chain for agricultural commodity is huge. And you have a lot of producers, some collectors, and then transformers. And so all these fluxes, until you measure quality, you do it blindly. And if you do it blindly, what happens is that you might mix two batches that are quite different. And when you mix them, you make something that is average, and that can degrade the quality of the premium batch. For instance, in malting barley, which is one of the products that is the most important in our portfolio, you want to have only the same variety. Variety are really hard to tell by eye. Imagine you have a cell where you stored 100 trucks and you put one or two wrong trucks. The whole cell becomes like not fit for barley making anymore. And so you're losing a lot of money and it's a waste. So the mission that we're doing is to try to save the value of each grain, providing qualification anywhere, anytime. Our solutions are on smartphones and are super simple to use. It's like you have grains, you take pictures, that's it. We do the analysis and we will provide you in real time a different list of criterions such as variety, protein content, number of broken grains, and there are a lot of technical metrics that are used by the industry. But it boils down to this. It's you use a smartphone, you take a picture, you have your answer.
Right. How do you make sure you have the right processes, the right tooling to tackle this complexity of you're very technical and you have an audience who might not be?
I wouldn't say that agriculture is not technical. It's super technical, and interestingly, is also really, really eager to test new technologies. So agriculture tests a lot of tech really early, but it's true that it's not really digital. At least in some countries, it's really fragmented. It's also really low margin, really high volume industry. And so you have a lot of turnover. So the people that use our tools, we cannot assume they have been trained because sometimes there are temp workers that are just there for the harvest. So our tools need to be absolutely super simple. And it takes a lot of work and technique to do this. And for instance, our system just work on bulk images of bulk grain. You don't need to store them in any way. We have some competitors that have systems where all the grains need to be well aligned in small spaces. So it helps their system, but it makes the usage more complex, longer, and more difficult. So every time, in terms of tech, we try to be really aggressive in trying to take convenience first and only sacrifice it as the last resort.
Right. What tools have you used in your whole stack to make sure you can focus on that extreme simplicity for your customers?
Our stack on the deep learning side is really, okay, let's try what is at the bleeding edge. And actually, we changed it several times. We have a lot of custom things, and regularly we try to have more off-the-shelf components. But the truth is, we had to build a lot of things, and we had to change it. AI goes really, really fast, and so in 5 years, we've changed completely several times the full AI stack. But when it comes to the rest of the system, it's a standard and strong backbone. And this is because also we know we are operating for industrials during the harvest. If our service is not available instantly, there are like lines of trucks that blocks villages and towns in the countryside, and all the clients are calling us. So we really have to deliver and to be resilient. So we took really proven technology. We took also the decision to build something that is really general because we knew there are many different crops, many different criterions, many different use cases. Not all farmers or silos have exactly the same workflows. So we made the system that is adaptable, that we would not have to write custom code for some client. So this is something that is really important. We want to be able to have a really strong default mode that works in like ideally 100% of the cases, in reality, not 100%, but that we can refine just by configuration to meet the needs of any users without having to write in the code something that is custom for someone. And in this respect, since the beginning, we knew our admin panel, so to speak, our control room was really important. And so we use the forest admin, which is like a way to avoid the shoemaker that has poor shoes problem. So head on, we were saying, okay, we have so much work on delivering the product that we want an admin panel that is nice, and we know beforehand that we won't be able to invest so much in this. And so, First Admin is a good solution for this because it provides out of the box a nice, clean UI that you can share across the team and that we use to control our systems.
Do you have any favorite feature in there?
It evolved with time. We are still really heavy user of simple viewing and giving access to different part of the data to different users. We use smart actions a lot. Natively, what you have is really simple ways to interact with the database, and smart actions are a step closer to the business reality. So if you're seeing an operation that is always the same, the first thing you can ask is, okay, let's make a smart action that safeguards this, so to create new users, to help configure their environment or these kind of things. We started with big clients. There are large corporations, and we were doing most of the configuration for them using Forest Admin. And as we progress, we want to address smaller and smaller stakeholders and clients, in particular farmers. And in this context, we cannot do the configuration manually for all of them. And what is interesting is that you start from the basic interface of Forest Admin, then you create a smart action that you use internally. This kind of stress and test the business logic. And at some point you say, okay, this smart action works so well. This path is so fluid. I can now put it in my system for my users to use by themselves. And so we have this kind of transition, improvement of our system where our user become more and more autonomous.
You have this kind of drip that happens where
exactly
you do something which is very manual, and then it goes into your automation that you do for your team, and then you can trickle down to your users, and that becomes part of your offering.
Exactly. You make your business logic evolve before you put it in your product, and it helps. Also because Forest Admin is not used only by tech people, and this is one of the most important things. It's a nexus where you can have developers or the people in the tech team that use it because it's an easier to use interface, but also it's the way they can start to give power to other people in the team. And then from there, you can go and give the power to the end user eventually.
That makes total sense. You're quite a small team and you're serving quite a large market. You need to have this agility or this flexibility to serve your customers while not having to put more headcount every time, right?
Yes. There is really an importance in being super efficient. So we need to have a high efficiency because we tend a really large market, as you were saying. It's also quite a cyclical one. There are a few weeks during the summer where most of our clients are harvesting, and they use much more the service, and their expectation is much higher. And the problem is more difficult because each year the harvest is different. And so in a matter of hours or days, crops can change. And so the models need to retrain all the time. During the harvest, when the clients use this the most.
Yeah.
During the harvest, we really have a lot of different types of operations. So a lot of customer support to be super reactive. Many people of the team that are not in the CSM or support part take part of this load during the harvest, which is also a good thing because you really get to understand what matters and how people interact with our systems. Even the technical teams that usually do some development, they will sometimes have to do operations. And this is required for the product to work. And so it's what we call product operations. And so it's really tending to all the operations that are needed to make sure the user has the service that we sold. And so, yes, we need to have very flexible people in the team that can tend to these different things at different moments of the year. And with tooling, the lever is incredible. It's much more powerful than headcount.
That's one of the changes of operation overall. You might have these spikes of activity, and what do you do during those times? And do you have any tips in terms of team management, training, onboarding, setting expectations?
It's really important to prepare. So we do, for instance, exercises. We do simulations beforehand. We do role playing where we used the past event or incidents or things like this, and plus imagination, and we do some role playing usually every year collectively, and we say, okay, who is doing what? How do you synchronize? Our systems are quite complex, so people need to have a really deep understanding of the whole system, not just their part, but how it connects to the others. And it's difficult to hire, for instance, I don't know, 10 person to tend your desk and train them in this level. And so it's much easier to have most of the people that is there all the time and has really high context, but provide them with tools. And so the other type of tools that we've made is also tools to um, intervene, like remotely change things. The fact that we configure things gives us knobs that we can turn in case of emergency. A particular customer would have really poor bandwidth because the 4G antenna was broken or something. Since it's configuration based, we can go there and just for him say, okay, you will use like more compressed pictures. You will lose a little bit on the quality of the measurement, but you will have your measurement while they're fixing these kind of things. And so this type of reactivity um, is only possible through tooling and preparation. So we spend 1 month every year preparing for this. And so retooling and brainstorming on what could go wrong exclusively, like preparing for the action plus the operations themselves.
It makes sense. Clearly, AI is at the core of what you do in the system, but are you also trying to find ways that you use AI in other use cases, help you with this training, or also just empower people in the team so that, as you said, like you get this lever effect over having more headcounts?
Yes, it's a great question. So, indeed, we are infused by AI-based transformation because we are also, to some extent, an AI-based transformation for some of our clients, and so we need to also help them navigate this. And there are like some interesting things where the reflex usually of companies and organization is to start small and see how it goes and then ramp up systems. In AI, it doesn't work really well. Usually, it's better to start big and possibly realize you're wrong and shift quickly, but don't start too small because you need a lot of data. When it comes to our own usage, most of the technical team use AI for coding. We are also a remote first company. So we have and we always had a heavy investment in documentation and writing. And so AI increases a lot the benefits of this. Now that we have LLMs that can access all this knowledge, we have very powerful tools. And so it changes the way people can access information. We are also really convinced that LLMs and agents will be like instrumental in digitizing agriculture because, as we were saying at the beginning, the agricultural industry is really technical, but it's not really digital. You have a lot of messy data, different paperwork, because it's so old and organic and large scale. And this breaks traditional software because traditional software need exact matching, exact formats, while AI is much more flexible. And so it can eat data, even if it's, I would say, not perfect. And this is also actually why in Inarix work, we are not working on documents, but we eat the messiness of biology. Biology creates huge variability that is surprising, and models ingest it and continue to be able to ingest it and make sense out of this. The future of the industry is in this direction for sure.
Do you see other ways that AI is going also to revolutionize what you're doing? You're almost at the beginning of what you're able to do, and I guess there is so much more coming, right?
Yes, there are many things. So today, what we are doing is making people able to measure things earlier than before and in larger, like vastly larger amounts. And so our customers now have much more data than they used to, and data that is longitudinal, that is trustable, and that is consistent. Um, and this allows to unlock much more optimization that will probably be, in part at least, AI powered. So because AI needs large amounts of data. And using our solution, our clients generate now vast amounts of data that they didn't use to have, or that would be really, really hard to get. And with this data, you can spot levers that you didn't have. And so we are sure this will be the trajectory that we are onto.
Great. There were two of the changes that you mentioned also when we're preparing for this. One is going international with your international expansion to 15 markets, and also starting to go from large accounts to smaller accounts and even I think to the farmer level. Can you tell us how this is impacting your organization?
International is quite interesting. One of the obvious things is with translation. And so even though we are a small team, we are, for instance, translated in Bulgarian. And now we are at the level where you can afford translation. There are sometimes interfaces that the translation was made dumbly. But now AI is much smarter than this. If you're set up properly, it's really easy to translate in a good enough way your systems for different markets. And actually what we do usually is we don't give it just the name in English and ask for a translation of this single button in the interface. You give the whole JSON with all the translation in all the languages of all the interfaces. And so the LLM will generate new wordings, but that are connected to all the languages, and so they make each other more robust. We are in a business where there is a lot of jargon, of technical terms that are not always the best translation in terms of literature, but this is the one that is used on the field, and all this context, AI has some of it, and so it's making much better translation. And it also helps to have support systems that work across language boundaries better. And so you can have more tooling and maybe less headcount. And so it simplifies a lot. So you don't have to think every time I want to go to this market, I need to have a team there. You can start and go to a really fairly high volume before you need to have someone that is native working there. The last thing was about the type of users. And so this is really an important transformation, going from big companies towards the smaller players. It's hard when you do SaaS, it's known, but B2C is really harder. Your product needs to be super robust, super simple, but in the difficult way. So when I see a product that is great and simple, I know there is a trajectory. There is a lot of work to get to this simplicity, and it takes time and it takes effort, and this is the path we are taking. So trying to really find the simplest thing that provides the value so everyone can use it. And we were really focused on the product and the tech. We are a tech startup, but the reality is many of the challenges are in the full experience of these users. And it starts with acquisition, sales, onboarding, and everything needs to be automated, needs to be low touch. There, again, AI will probably be really, really useful in the future, because we used to have onboarding calls with our clients to help them set up the system. And we know that there are really nice tools that have this fancy walkthrough, but it's really hard to make one. Plus, if you make a walkthrough and you change anything in your product, your walkthrough is broken. And so
something we're actually thinking about for Forest Admin, because we're seeing more and more in SaaS, people applying this vibe coding approach where you just speak to your AI and will configure for you your tool. And I think that's what you're orienting to as well.
There is an interesting question. Does the AI need to do it, or does it need to help you do it? What do you want? Do you want AI to train the person to use your system, or you want it to become the new interface? And that's how they interact with the system. And both are equally valid proposition for different businesses and different contexts. For sure, both approach are relevant.
For sure. Any advice for startups like yours where you're trying to modernize an industry or bring something very new? As we are saying, agriculture is technological itself, but not necessarily digital. Do you have advice specific for this kind of context?
The advice I have is to stay a beginner, always like never assume you know. And this is a strength when you are small, a strength when you're starting, and you need to keep this strength as you progress. Not knowing opens you up to really hearing what people have to say and then experimenting, because people cannot tell you everything.
Awesome. Any last word to top that?
No.
Great. Artemis, it's been awesome. I'm going to listen back to this when I'm going to edit the video, and I'm going to relearn something that you said, because I think it was full of good tips and advice. So thank you very much for that. Thank you again for taking the time and for having this honest information for the listener of the podcast.
Thank you very much for the invitation. It's nice from time to time to step back and discuss about these kind of things. So thanks for the invitation.
My pleasure. Thank you, Artemis, and take care.
Thank you, Guillaume. Bye-bye.